Hey, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to Stories That Inspire Us. My name is Janice, your host of the podcast. Today is Thursday, July 21st. I'm doing good this week with my dates. This is a good start. You know, Stories has had so many amazing guests on, and today I have another amazing guest on. And before I officially introduce her, I just want to tell you a little bit about her. She's a former teacher, a certified life coach, and she is the founder of Mentally Strong Moms. I'm so excited to welcome to today's podcast, Ashley Jangro. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Oh, you're so welcome. Now, you have a very unique story, and I was inspired in so many different ways because you're a mom and you really dove into a situation that many may have turned away from. Let's start with where you are today and move a little bit backwards.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I am a life coach. I work with moms whose kids are struggling with mental health, as well as I work with teens who are struggling with anxiety or depression. And you know a little bit about my story, so you can jump in and ask any questions that you want. But would you like me to dive into how that started? How I got?
I would, because I think it's a very unique perspective from not only a mom's point of view, but as a licensed certified life coach, because I don't know how you do what you did, but you did it. And that's what's amazing.
Yeah. So it started because several years ago, my daughter, who's now 16, was really struggling with her own mental health. She was young. She was really young for this, and she was just really struggling. She was struggling with depression. She was struggling with anxiety. We found out a lot later that there was undiagnosed ADHD there. And so it was causing a lot of difficulty for her. And she reached a point where she was struggling with suicidal ideation, and she just could not handle the things that were happening for her. So I was teaching at her school at the time, and her counselor brought me in and we talked about a lot of things. And it was tough because I knew she needed help. I knew she needed support. I knew she needed a therapist. I knew these things, but I struggled really hard to find her the support she needed. There were like 6-month wait lists for the adolescent therapists in our area. I felt like I tried so many ways to get her support. You know, it was more, she needed more support than what her school counselor could offer. But I felt like I kept just hitting a brick wall. Like there wasn't the support there. And so I think I shared with you, I did something that maybe most parents couldn't do. And I went back to school to get my degree in counseling. Again, I was a teacher at the time, and I thought I wouldn't be able to counsel her, but I would learn strategies that would allow me to help her, and that would allow me to help the other teens in the area that weren't able to get the support they needed as well. However, I got to the point, I finished my degree, all but 6 credits that go along with the internship. And right then, the pandemic hit. And so my internship got shut down. And what I had noticed is that all the things I was learning, as amazing as they were, I loved all the education I got in counseling. It was not changing anything for my daughter. You know, we would like work through workbooks and we would learn strategies and we would do all these things, but it wasn't really having the impact on her that I hoped. And at that time, when my internship got shut down, I decided to become a life coach. It was similar to therapy. It was something I could do from home. I didn't need to be at a workplace. So I did that. As a part of that, I started receiving life coaching as a client as well. And it completely shifted everything for me. It changed, I learned to really investigate my thoughts and to identify what I was feeling. And then I learned strategies for handling those feelings. I learned to investigate what I was thinking and look at how that was creating my reality. And I started addressing those things in my life. And it blew my mind because as I learned those things, it started creating a shift in my daughter's mental health. And looking back, all I can think of is that because of how our brains work, because of, these things we have called mirror neurons, but also because of how I was showing up as mom, like when she would ask for help with something, how I addressed her feelings and her thoughts and her emotions and her problems differently because of my shift in mental health, that it was having an impact on how she thought. Does that make sense? That it was, I was addressing my own
Sure.
issues, but it impacted her. And so
Oh,
that's kind of how that was born.
and excuse me, in when you're going through something like that, even with all the education that you have,
Mhm.
which is amazing, but to learning to navigate not only as a mom, but to not, I don't want to say coach your daughter, but to, be there with your daughter to
Mhm.
work through these issues. And let's face it, a lot of our teens are going through so much these days.
Yeah.
And I don't think that a lot of times that there is the resources, as you had mentioned,
Mhm.
to in a wait list of 6 months.
Right.
I can't even imagine, like, my child excuse
Mm.
me, I'm losing my voice, I don't know why.
Oh, geez.
My child needs help, like, let's do something here. That must have
I
been
I
crazy.
kept feeling that frustration. I kept feeling, and I was on the phone all day with insurance companies and different programs. I remember finding one program that I thought would be great for her. And then they called me back and said, at the time she was 12. And they called back and said, she's welcome here. She's, we can get her in immediately, but the entire group is 8. They're all 18. So, we might be addressing some things that aren't really relevant to her yet. And I thought, there's no way that I can put her in a group with a bunch of 18-year-olds. And I just felt like I was, like I said, hitting my head against a brick wall. It was so incredibly frustrating. And I thought it was so interesting that, when I first started as a client of life coaching, I didn't go in to talk about my own mental health. I didn't go in to talk about depression or anxiety or even my child. I engaged in life coaching to the first thing I wanted to address was over drinking. I was drinking more than I wanted to, and that's what I went to be coached on. I went in to be coached on weight loss. I went in to be coached on building a business, but the strategies that I learned impacted how I looked at everything, and and it started seeping into my conversations with her. I never tried to either counsel her or coach her. I knew that, I mean, first of all, on the counseling side, there's that ethical issue with counseling somebody that you're close to. But with coaching, by that time, she was a teenager. And if anyone listening has teenagers, they know your child doesn't want to be coached. I didn't even try teaching her the concepts. I was just talking with her about my own experiences. I would talk to her about, something I felt anxious about and how I was handling my own anxiety and how I had learned that it was just a normal human emotion that we all have and that it's not a problem, and that I could feel it and then do things anyway, or that I could feel it and then learn to sit and process that emotion. And as I talked to her about my experiences, it impacted her, which is why, I was coaching teens for a while, but I started thinking I can spend an hour a week with a teenager. But if moms can learn these strategies and raise their kids with them and live in transformation in front of their kids, then it makes such a difference in their kids' lives.
I can't even imagine. And I would guess that your daughter witnessing or being a part of a
Mm-hmm.
conversation, not being talked at, but
Mm-hmm.
sharing from a perspective that it obviously helped her in such a way where she didn't feel like she was being cast aside, like, okay, we'll
Yeah.
deal with this issue. Or I would assume that she felt like, oh, okay, mom has some shit going on too. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. There
maybe,
were so many times
yeah,
where it would,
maybe I should tune into that, right?
yeah, there were so many times where it would just come up in conversation. Cause yeah, she wanted, obviously she wants her feelings validated, doesn't want to feel cast aside, but she also doesn't want to feel lectured at.
Hmm.
So she didn't want to feel like, I'm like, okay, you're struggling with anxiety today. Here, you need to try this and you need to try this. It wasn't like that at all. Like, I remember one of our conversations, we were having a discussion. It was getting kind of tense. I'm trying to remember even what it was about. It was about maybe like we had a misunderstanding about, I thought she was going to be home at a certain time and she wanted to stay out later with friends. But I remember stopping her, like things were getting a little bit heated in our discussion. I stopped her and I was like, listen, I'm feeling rejected right now. I need to take a second and I need to just process this emotion. And I used one of the tools that I learned in coaching. And I just sat there and I said out loud what I was doing. I said, right now I'm looking inside my body and I'm finding the shape of the feeling of rejection. And I'm finding the color. And I'm drawing my breath to it and I'm relaxing into it. And I'm just going to allow it to be here for a second because it hurts. And I knew I didn't want to continue the conversation from that place of hurt. So I told her, I'm like, I'm just going to do this so it can dissipate. And then I can re-engage with my prefrontal cortex and like talk rationally with you. And so I did that. I described the color and the shape and like the temperature and the texture and the movement out loud to her. This is so different than me telling her she needs to do this, right? And I remember we were in that discussion. And as I finished, I took a breath and I'm like, okay, I can talk again. And we were sitting on the couch and she like crawled across the couch and like crawled onto my lap. She's 16, but she's really tiny. She crawled on my lap and she was like, that was amazing. And I want to be able to do that when I'm having an intense emotion. And I was like, this is so much better than being like, here's how you need to deal with your emotions. Like just living it in front of her was so huge.
Such a very poignant statement there, because teens are often talked at. Yet by her witnessing your learning experience, your anxiety, your emotions of processing and explaining how all of that felt, the color, the texture, that obviously made a huge impact on her.
Yeah.
That must have been fascinating for you as well as a mom, thinking, oh wow, I did something right this time.
Right.
Because
I didn't know ahead of time I was going to do that. It wasn't like a strategy that I'd planned out. It just happened organically and it was really amazing.
Wow.
And she did talk to me later about how she would do that with her. She'd have a big feeling coming up, whether it was like test anxiety or feeling upset about something that had happened at school, that she would just sit with it and she'd find the color and she'd find the shape and she would go through that process. And I think I mentioned to you, it was about 6 months after I started coaching, getting coached myself, that I had witnessed, I don't even know if I was aware of it at the time that it was happening, but I had witnessed shifts in her struggle. And she came back to me and she said, I don't think I need to be on antidepressants anymore. Like, I think I'm handling things differently. I think that I've developed my strategies to the point where I don't think I need the antidepressants anymore. And obviously that was something that we like worked through with her doctor. But it was really amazing to see, like, I wasn't trying to teach her or coach her. It was just living in transformation in front of her that made such a huge difference.
Living in transformation. And I do recall that conversation, and I'm still getting the chills. For your 16-year-old daughter to have the forthwith to say, I don't think I need this stuff anymore. It really shows to me not only her maturity in a situation and thinking that through, but applying what she learned from you in such a way that she was able to own what she said in that moment.
Yeah. Well, and it was so fascinating to me because I feel like for years we had been, and that was, I'm thinking maybe almost 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, but for years we had been trying to learn techniques together. Like we would meditate, or we would, I don't know, we would read workbooks, or we would apply something that I was learning in my counseling program. We would try these things together. And something about me having that experiential knowledge of it, of applying it to myself and then working through it and then living in transformation in front of her
Mhm.
made so much of a difference because there's something that happened differently in her brain than when I was like teaching it to her. So I thought that was neat. But yes, she is very, very self-aware and perceptive about what's going on with herself.
And that is amazing. When so she's been is she definitely off the antidepressant?
Yeah, I'm thinking it's been maybe 2 years now,
Wow,
or
phenomenal.
yeah, or a year and a half. And I mentioned to you, we discovered the undiagnosed ADHD, and that when we could begin, and I also am diagnosed with ADHD. So when we could begin to like apply some of those, just some of the coping strategies that we have for that, it really helped her manage some of the other mental health components. It helped a lot with anxiety when
Mhm.
she's learning to manage her ADHD.
And I would imagine as well as she goes into the world as an adult, will no doubt what she's learned as a teenager, her struggles that
Mhm.
she's pulled out, what she's applied is going to really help her transform into an even more amazing adult.
Absolutely. I think that sometimes with teens that have a really easy time as a teenager and then they have to develop those skills as an adult, it can be more of a struggle. But
Mhm.
she's had the opportunity to do that now.
And that is fascinating. What is one thing that she wants to accomplish for herself? Like maybe that's a goal that she maybe thought, gee, I'm not sure, but now, hey, I'm going for it.
Yeah, she does so much. She has big goals. For a long time, she wanted to go to an Ivy League school at some point. However, then she got very involved in marching band. And so now she looks at schools with really strong marching bands. One of the things that she started doing as she was able to process those emotions of anxiety, she was able to put herself out there more. So she's an artist, and she was able to put her work onto Instagram and to put her work. She does like time lapse videos of her drawings, and it was really scary for her at first because just anytime putting yourself out there. But she started. She looks back at those drawings now and she's like, wow, I was not very great back then. I think she was. But now we can look at Instagram and see her progression. But had she not been able to manage those feelings of anxiety, she never would have put herself out there in the first place.
And again, amazing to hear that. And I can, it's like I can almost picture her looking at her Instagram and like,
Mhm.
hey, I gotta
Yeah.
give my pat on the back.
Yes. Well, she does, but she's also like, wow, I was really terrible back then. But she does look at that and she's like, look at my growth. And she would not have had that growth if she hadn't, committed to posting every so often and sticking with that. And it took so much of her, it took so much mind management to be able to continue with that, even, and she gets nasty comments sometimes. She gets people telling her that she's terrible at drawing. And it doesn't impact her the same way it would have if she didn't have the tools that she has now.
That is beyond fantastic.
I know it blows my mind all the time.
Wow.
I have, as I mentioned, a lot of kids. I'm mom and stepmom of 6 total. And I'm constantly amazed by all of them.
And you had mentioned the Brady Bunch, I think.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That my husband and I are sort of like the Brady Bunch.
And for those of you who don't remember who the Brady Bunch is,
Mhm.
that's a story for another time. We'll fill you in because we forgot about it. Ashley, I think from a perspective, not only as a mom, but as a life
Mhm.
coach, and seeing your daughter develop and move forward with her life, how is that? I could imagine for your clients,
Mhm.
that must be like, wow, if Ashley can work through this. what can that mean for my child? What can that mean for
Yeah.
me?
Yeah. I think it's been amazing to get to share my story with my clients. And I always do so with my daughter's permission, by the way. I always check with her, like, here's what I'm saying. Is this okay with you that it's out there? Yeah, I've had a lot of clients that have come to me and told me that their child is either struggling with depression or struggling with anxiety. And, how can they help? Sometimes I end up working with the teens, and that's amazing. However, I always tell the mom, like, if you were living this way, if you were practicing these things and addressing your own issues this way, it's going to have an impact on them. And I have one client who was struggling, she didn't outwardly struggle with anxiety. It wasn't something she talked to her kids about, but her kids also struggled with anxiety. And we started working on some of these strategies of processing emotions and investigating the thoughts that were creating the emotions. And we talked about strategies, how she could teach her child that without actually teaching, by living in transformation in front of her. And she would do the same thing. She would say, oh, I'm struggling with anxiety. Here's what it looks like. Here's what it feels like. And she told me recently that her daughter had begun using that same strategy and took it even a step further. Her daughter, who had struggled with anxious feelings, was managing her own anxiety, and that she was starting to teach these strategies to her friends at school. She was starting to, she had gotten into a situation in the lunchroom with a kid who really struggled with a lot of anger. She used the word bully for him. We challenged that word a lot in my program, but she'd use the word bully. And instead of like cowering away or being confrontational, she just went to him and was like, hey, I can see you're angry. Let's talk about your anger. And my client showed me a picture where the daughter had sat down and drawn this kid's anger, like what it felt like to him in his body. And through that, he had calmed down, like he had reached a point of calm. And it was so incredible to me. I thought, this is something that could change the world, as moms. Yeah. Right.
Yes.
As we're living it, as our kids begin living it, as they begin spreading it in their schools and with their friends, it could change the world.
And it obviously has. And I see it continuing that way. We need to spread it around a lot more. And, I'm thinking of, excuse me, I'm thinking of the student who was angered, that he saw something in what the other student was trying to show him, and by drawing it out. They need, I believe, you're the expert, obviously, but it sounds like they need more coping mechanisms than these schools or society in general are able to provide.
Right. And you talk about coping mechanisms. Like I think back to, I don't think I ever understood my emotions as a child, or understood, if I have a really huge, overwhelming emotion, I had no idea what to do with that. I had no idea that it was normal, that it was, something that I could take seriously, but not so seriously that it meant something that I needed to react to it. Or I don't know. Do you remember ever learning anything about our feelings as a child?
Yes and no. My parents had 6 children, and all that I really remember from my childhood, from like till about 10 years old, was sitting in an ice skating rink. My brother's an ice skater. But, as far as I do remember, by the way, and this has come up a lot lately, I do not know how to cursive write.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I never learned. Now, I was in catechism class. Gosh, I must have been about 6 or 7 years old. And Sister Mary, whatever her name was, with the ruler, right?
Oh boy. Uh-huh.
So my name is spelled Janis, and I don't know how to cursive write. So I had 2 strikes against me. So guess what I got?
The smack on the back of the hand.
The smack on the back of the hand. But anyways, long story short with that, what I do recall is when my mom took me for a checkup with the pediatrician. And that's when ADHD was just starting to come out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was never officially diagnosed. And I remember them saying, the doctor saying, well, there's this, new drug. And my mother said, oh, hell no. She's only, I was young at
Yeah.
the time. No medication. So, do I have a learning problem? Quite possibly. And if I do, I do. In fact, I contacted my little grandnephew, by the way, who's going to kind of help me with my cursive writing. So who knows? You're never too old to learn something. But to specifically answer your question, to be, obviously I was a small child, but, think of that in this day and age, like that is crazy.
That would
So,
never happen now. Yeah.
right? So children or kids, teens, having those coping mechanisms that can really help them through that,
Mm-hmm.
because we're brought up to respect our elders. I was like, what the heck did I do? My name is
Right.
Janis, Janis. No, it's not, you're spelling it wrong. Like, I remember that vividly. And my
Wow.
hand hurts, by the way, just saying.
Just think, because you just did that. You're like
Oh
reliving
gosh.
some childhood memory right here. But I mean, I think about that too, about how often, boy, and so much of my program covers this, but how often I think about correction and obedience. And I
Mhm.
teach parents all the time, like, to step back and ask yourself why. Like, why is it so important that my child obey in this way? And I always talk about, prioritizing connection over correction, because that's where through that connection is where that obedience actually, is cultivated, as opposed to correction and fear. But it really amazes me to think about, our kids. I think our kids now do have more resources. There's more emotional intelligence taught in schools. But I teach my kids and my clients and my clients' kids all the time that if we can learn to manage our emotions, if we can learn to understand that no emotion is a problem, that, the thoughts that are leading to that emotion aren't even true, even though our brain presents them as true. And we can learn to be okay with any emotion that's presented. We're like, we have a superpower. Like it's a superpower.
The superpower of, and I want to just repeat this back to make sure that I wrote it down
Yeah.
correctly. Prioritizing the connection over a correction.
Correction. Yeah.
Can you give us an example of that?
Absolutely. So, and I'll just give an example that I give all the time on my social media and on, when I'm talking about this. But I think about a time that I'd asked my daughters, my older teenage two, to have their laundry put away by Thursday morning. So Wednesday night, they could get it done. But I needed my laundry baskets back. I was tired of chasing them down, and I just needed this done. It was going to make my life easier. And I went in their rooms after they had left for school that Thursday morning, and their laundry was all still sitting there. They had not gotten to it. And I think that my nature and my learning, my inclination was to take away devices, to ground them, to put some sort of limitations on them. And I stepped back and I asked myself, this is like the most important question I ever asked myself. What am I making it mean? And I realized I was making it mean that they don't respect me. And as a result, if I had not stopped and asked myself, what am I making it mean? Then when they got home from school that day, I would have treated them a certain way, because I would be operating out of this thought, they don't respect me. And so I had that opportunity to investigate that. And I asked myself, I'm like, what are other possible meanings of this? That they're busy, that they're overwhelmed, that they don't have the tools they need to manage their time well. And it showed me how I could help them instead of just grounding them. So go ahead.
So what you just described was how you prioritize the connection over correction, but you
Mhm.
looked at your behavior in such a way where you specifically ask yourself, what am I making that mean? That's pretty
Mhm.
significant.
Mhm. I
Some
love
parents,
that question.
some parents would have like, this is it, I'm
Mhm.
taking everything away, I'm done.
Yes. Yeah. And if I stop and ask myself, what am I making it mean? I would ask myself, well, why? Why do I want to take everything away just because they did not get to this one task? And if I focused on correcting that, yes, in the future, they might always have their laundry folded, but it's going to interrupt our connection with each other. And so when they got home from school that day, if I had been operating out of they don't respect me, then I would have showed up in a way that interrupted that connection. But because I had addressed my own emotions about it, when they got home from school, I could connect with them. And I was like, hey, I noticed that the laundry didn't get folded. What's going on? Is there something I can help with? Like maybe I don't even remember what the case was that there had been some stress with schoolwork or one of their after school activities, and they were feeling so overwhelmed with the amount on their plates that they just didn't even remember that they had told me that. And again, I could take that as they don't respect me, they don't care about me, or I could maintain that connection with them and teach them and help them.
Wow, maintain that connection, and that for sure you did. Now, you mentioned you have different programs.
Yes.
What is one program perhaps that sticks out in your mind, whether it's for teens, whether
Mhm.
it's for the moms, or whether it's in a group setting?
So I have the Mentally Strong Mom program that I teach both in a group setting or as a one-on-one program. It's a 12-week program where we go through, processing our own emotions, investigating our own thoughts as a way to teach these things to our kids. So it's really addressing what's going on with mom so that she can have, her own mental strength repaired so she can show up as a strong mom, but also because of the way it impacts their kids. So I teach that both in a group program and a one-on-one setting.
That's amazing.
And then I have a separate 3-month, I don't even necessarily call it a program, just a one-on-one coaching that I do with teens. I don't have a group program for teens, but that I do with teens that's 12 weeks long. And it's so unique and individualized to whatever's going on with them. So in the past, I've used it to work with teens that are having panic attacks, that are about to graduate high school and just need help figuring out what's coming next. So different things, different situations like that. I'm trying to think of any other examples I could roll off the top of my head. But it's mostly just like to learn these skills so that they're able to face life differently.
Wow. And maintaining is so significant for our youth.
Mhm.
Growing, learning.
Yeah.
Wow. Ashley, where can our viewers and listeners connect with you?
Yes. So I am Ashley Jangro. It's Jangro on all the social media. My website's ashleyjangro.com. And I have an option, I think, on that website where if you click that first button, then it's a strategy session where people can just come and we can talk about what's going on. Do any of these solutions that I have make sense for you? So I would love to connect to your audience. I'm very excited about it.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. And everyone, I will certainly make sure all that information gets in the show notes. Ashley, I want to thank you so much for being here today. We've covered a lot of material, but there's still so much more to chat about. So I hope that you will definitely consider coming back for another visit.
I would love to. I love talking with you. It's so wonderful. And I really appreciate you inviting me to be on here. Thank you for that.
Oh, well, you're so welcome. Everyone, our youth today is going through such a time where they need the tools and strength to go forward in life. And what better way to do that And it's stressful for parents too. We don't want to, it's not just about the children, it's also about the
Yeah.
parents. But our children today are facing so many different things that we never even anticipated or went through ourselves as children. So if you have questions, concerns, please reach out to Ashley. I know that she would love an opportunity to chat with you. And I am so excited that she's going to be on again. We'll have to figure that
Mhm.
out sometime soon, of course. And if you have a story to share that you know it's going to inspire someone, let them know about Stories That Inspire Us podcast. Ashley, thank you again so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
You're so welcome. And let this be the beginning of an amazing time where our youth are able to gather these skills and everything so that they can move forward with their lives. This is Stories That Inspire Us. My name is Janice. I am the host. Today, I was inspired by the amazing Ashley Jangro.
Thank
More
you.
about the Brady Bunch to follow. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.